Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Sebastian Budget Review Advisory Committee for Monday, January 11th, 2016. Would you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Nancy, if you would do the roll call, please.
Here.
Mr. Frank?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Present.
Okay. It's our first meeting of the new year. We have one new member. To my left, the audience is right. Mr. Harry Hall has joined us. Welcome, Mr. Hall. And Mr. Kilgore, the floor is yours for the selection process.
Make a motion for Mr. Harley.
I'll second the motion.
Oh, sorry about that.
I thought we might be out of a mic. I didn't say anything. Okay. Thank you all very much for your continued confidence in doing this job. We'll take another shot at it. You want me to do the...
I think it'd be appropriate for you to handle the vice chair.
Okay. So we'll open nominations for vice chairman. I don't hear anybody.
I'll nominate Michael Frank, Vice Chair.
I second that.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Mr. Frank, you have the duty. Okay, we're through that. Next item, 7, approval of minutes of the meeting of August 17th, 2015. Do I have a motion to approve?
I motion.
Okay, I'll second it. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 So approved. Okay, on to the heart of the meeting, or one of the hearts of the meeting. The review of the fourth quarter report, year ending September 30th, 2015. Mr. Kilgore.
Okay, this is the unaudited conclusion of our last fiscal year. We think the numbers are pretty close. We don't usually have any major adjustments to the books, but the auditors are working on the end of the year financial statements. This should give you a pretty good idea of how we ended up the year, though. Included in the packet is the agenda transmittal to the City Council, as well as the resolution we asked them to adopt to formally approve all the budget changes that we have for that quarter. There's a detailed list. Most of these were like cleanup or closing out projects. No significant dollar amounts really involved. We present both what the city manager approved, what changes were already approved by the council during the quarter, and then we are asking them to approve a few minor adjustments out of the equipment and facilities reserve account. Some things that came up during the last quarter that needed to be handled. As an overview, the general fund, 99% of budgeted revenues were received, and 98.3% of departmental spending was done. So we were within budget. In total, we had a few departments slightly over, but overall, the 98% of spending is a pretty good level, shows we did stay within our guidelines. As far as our special revenue funds and capital projects, we did quite well, actually. You'll see a detailed list of the capital projects later on in this report. But essentially, we had most of the special revenue funds that spend those projects came in a little bit above budget. The local option gas tax and DST exceeded our expectations. Stormwater fee came close to it. So we did have sufficient monies to fund some significant projects last year. And as I said, there's a detailed list later in the report. I wanted to report that our debt service funds and our long-term debt, we were in compliance with all the provisions of the bank notes that we use for our financings. The golf course had an increase in revenues over the previous year, but they also had increased spending. They seem to have a pattern over the last few years of about a spread of about $30,000. So something we need to, of course, pay attention to. I think some of that's attributed to our optimistic revenue projections that hopefully we can do a better job with. As far as the airport fund, those figures are skewed because of the grant program. So on the spending side and revenue side, there's the impact of the grant revenues and expenses. Rental income, of course, has some impact on that as well, but they did have a profit for last year of about $52,000. The building department had another good year, and their revenues increased somewhat, and their spending is still within within their budget capabilities. The next pages show the details of all our city funds. Pretty much have covered the major funds, and it also shows the departments and how their individual spending was for the general fund at the end of that section. Jumping over then to the capital projects report, you'll see quite a few items there that were 100% completed. We are happy to have that result this year. A few of the major projects like the golf course irrigation system, the Tulip Drive project, which is subject to grants, the Cavcore project, which is, I think there's some permitting issues. So some of those were delayed, but on the most part, a lot of the projects were completed during the year, and that's a good thing. On the next page, I show the quarterly investment report, continuing to invest primarily with our city, our local bank. Seacoast Bank offers a rate, overnight rate that's the best we can do under the current market conditions. So. I wanted to speak a little bit about the general fund cash reserves and the equipment and facilities repair and replacement reserve monies. We've had, we started out basically with a $5 million reserve balance. We broke out the profits back in 2013. At the end of that year, we took that surplus and created the reserve account. So this allows us to to handle unexpected things that come up that aren't budgeted, that need immediate attention, like repairs, roofing work, whatever it may be, a replacement of vehicles where it doesn't make sense to repair them. I expect that we would probably be increasing the reserve balance based on last year's results because it's funded based on the difference between revenues and expenses. So with a profit basically shown last year, we'll be able to bump that up a bit. As we'll get into, I think Mr. Hurley's passed out some information about the early retirement program, and we are spending essentially $250,000, $247,000 out of reserves, but we expect to pay back in the next fiscal year of some $500,000. So sticking with that plan should have the result of improving our position down the road by having a number of either vacancies or positions filled at a lesser rate. The balance of the report is information from the departments based on what accomplishments they feel they did during the last quarter. So I would be glad to respond to any questions, and I always put out there that, if you have any detailed questions or you want some time with me to go through the report, one-on-one, I'd be happy to do that at any time. So just contact my office and we'll do that. So do you have any questions?
Okay, historically, what we've done is gone down the row of members of the committee, and if you have questions, ask them. Mr. Frank?
At this point, not right now. No, thank you.
Mr. Slavin?
Nope, none this time.
Mr. Taylor?
Ken, in your report, you mentioned all the capital improvements were completed 100%. Can we just verify whether or not we've started the golf course project? I saw Main Street was completed and some other projects we talked about when we left.
Yes, I am aware the golf course irrigation project has gotten started. There's a number of the holes out there that the system has been already installed. I think they are a bit behind schedule from what I heard, but I think everyone's happy with the progress that they're making.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Did you want an update on any of the capital projects, or did that cover it?
I think that was, for the most part, we're just trying to pick up where we left off last year. We only had about 4 of them.
Yeah, I know the Tulip Avenue and the Cavcore project is a big part of the monies that weren't spent, and there was permitting and some things that held those up, but I think they are coming pretty close to being able to get started.
And then you've got a few others that haven't even, that are either held off or haven't started. The airport hangar C hasn't started. That's getting close, I think, although I haven't talked to Mr. Griffin in some time about it. But it'll get started sometime this year. The Airport East project is almost, is done, except there was a big delay on the golf course maintenance building, and that's now going forward. That's been approved by City Council. So that golf course building will get built, and then the old one will get destroyed, and that whole strip, if you've been out East Airport Drive, will get finished up and landscaped and so on and so forth. So those are other ones that are still hanging out there. Okay. Deanna, do you have anything?
Not at this time. I mean, other than just wanting to be updated on where everything's at before we go ahead with everything. And my concern is more where are we with IT and just making sure everything's updated and moved with, along with just the unfinished projects that we had at the end of last year. But otherwise, no.
Sergio?
I need a copy of the report. Where do I didn't receive a copy of it.
You didn't?
No.
It was, when did it come out?
I think it was a separate attachment along with the agenda, if I remember.
Back in December.
I'll check my email again, but I'm pretty sure I didn't receive it.
I'll be glad to get you a new one. I mean,
Thank you, I
a
appreciate
little
it.
bit late, but.
And Mr. Hall, have you had a chance to look at it?
Yes, I did. I really am new and don't know a lot of history to the city just yet, so I just had two questions, if I may. The golf course seems to be running in arrears year after year. Is that something that the city council really plans on continuing for the enjoyment of the community, or is that something that we're really trying to run as a profit enterprise? I see no problem with doing it for the enjoyment of the city if that's the case. I just don't know the history on it.
I believe, I mean, I can't speak for the council, but I believe historically they've accepted that there's going to be good years and bad years, and they've not really expressed a lot of concern when we do have those years where the revenues don't cover the expenses. With the new irrigation project that they're putting in and some efforts to improve the course, if you've been out there, there's been quite a few repairs and upgrades to some of the facility. You know, that they're really trying hard to increase the clientele and the number of annual memberships. They've got some flexibility now. The council's given them on adjusting rates during different periods of the year. So we keep trying. We keep trying to get the revenues up. I know
Personally, I'd like to see the rates kept as low as possible for the citizens and all, but
Yeah.
I was just curious. I didn't know the history. The other thing is the early retirement. I'm not clear on some of the numbers I'm seeing here. What is the anticipated impact on the fund balance for the first and second year? Or will it have an impact on the fund balance?
the fund balance because of the early retirement.
Yes.
Yeah, we are expecting in this fiscal year, we'll have about $250,000 reduction of reserves. It'll take about that much to do the payoffs for the years of service that the ones that elected to take the program will be paid. We think the following year, there would be about $500,000 of net gain. So we'll essentially be paying back ourselves for what we're laying out in this fiscal year and have a little bit of cushion to handle what we think is going to be a year that we're going to need some additional capability. We've got the labor agreements are up for negotiation. We've got some other things we like to see done, and of course, we saw early in this fiscal year where we needed to start trying to figure out how we were going to pay for what we wanted to do next year.
So will this all be phased in, or be all the employees will leave at a date certain? Or?
Okay, there were 13 employees that elected to go with the early retirement program. There were 9 of those where it was effective January 1st, so they already have left the city. We've got the other 4, I think, are leaving at the end of this month, or we've got Nancy here is the special exception, and she won't be leaving till the end of February. But we will essentially have the differences between how we replace those positions and or leave those vacant for the balance of the year that will offset the payouts that we're giving to the 13.
Thank you.
Next year we'll be looking at a spread of about $500,000, so we'll pay ourselves back the $250,000 out of reserves that we're putting out this year, and then that frees up $250,000 next year, and then hopefully we'll still have those savings of $500,000 in years after that,
Well, provided you don't have to backfill.
subject to everything else that happens that
Right.
ruins our plans, but,
Well, thank you.
yes, sir.
I think there are a couple of things that we ought to clarify and let the public know. First off, the golf course, and we do this, we mention it on a fairly regular basis. The golf course is what's called an enterprise fund. So the golf course costs have nothing to do with the general fund as far as tax rate is concerned. So whatever goes on at the golf course doesn't affect property tax. It doesn't affect the millage. We ought to make that clear, and we say it over and over again, because you hear people say, oh, the golf course is costing us a fortune and it's going to up our taxes. And the answer is no, it's not. Granted that the golf course as a business, we need to, as everybody said, we need to up the revenue. That's easy to sit here and say and hard to do. A lot of it depends on the weather and the economy and the snowbirds that show up and so on and so forth. Also, the golf course has a certain cost of operation because it rents its land from the airport enterprise fund. Because that whole piece of property way back, airport and all the property around it where the golf course is, was deeded to the city by the Federal Aviation Administration. So that's that one. The other thing that Ken, you've talked a fair amount about the general fund. And the general fund is a fairly sacred subject for this committee. And we always have a concern that we keep it at or near the level that we've gotten into, somewhere in the high 4 million, early 5 million. And you are going to take it out, but you propose to, as I understand it, pay it back later on with savings, if all goes well.
Well, in addition, if all goes well, we've got about $360,000 in the R&R, the equipment and facilities reserve. So worst case scenario, if that wasn't all spent before some incident happened that we'd need those reserve, the full $5 million, we would still be all right. If we spend all the reserve monies and we get caught, like right now with having spent out that $250,000, well, actually the worst time is like in August, September time frame. If you remember the report I had given some time ago, if it hits us at that point of the year, then we would be impacted on any property damages citywide. It would affect our revenue base. So that's why we established like a $5 million target. But the key is you can have that target and the amount in reserves, but if it's all tied up in inventory, if it's tied up in, your prepaid bills, all those things factor into how much is actually available. So the key is how much cash you have. And you can see from the investment and cash report, we have well over the $5 million available in general fund.
Again, I think we've repeated this before, but we say it again at the start of another year. It is said that our fund is inordinately high. The state requires, I think, based on the size of this city, somewhere $2.5 million is about a level that the state wants. But why has Sebastian got more? One answer: hurricanes. And you can wipe out that reserve fund with 1 or 2 hurricanes in the course of a year. You need the cash to operate, instant cash to operate during a dire emergency. I'd like to tell a story very briefly of, I think it was Lakeland, Florida, a few years ago. They had we had a lot of frost, and the strawberry people were pumping water out of the ground. All of a sudden, there were nothing but sinkholes all over Lakeland. They expended their reserve. They didn't have a very big one, and they ended up with no cash. And kind of desperate situation. Well, we don't want to end up in something like that. And so that's our rainy day fund, and Ken
And
has
we've
done-
had the good fortune for a number of years now of not having any incidences, so, the odds are against us.
Yeah, so I've rambled on about that, but I think everybody wants to know why, and that's the background on the general fund. Okay, anybody else got any questions on the closeout of 2015, the fourth quarter? If not, we need to make a motion for recommendation to the city council. The motion would be the budget committee recommends the approval of the fourth quarter budget with its amendments. I need a second.
Second it.
And all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. That can go on. Okay. Next item, general discussion by the members and upcoming year. Ken, do you got some thoughts and preface all this?
I have to put my mic on first. I appreciate, as budget committee members, you need to have some understanding of what's going on from month to month and quarter to quarter, of course. There's been some things that have happened since October 1st. We got into the early retirement program, and you're aware of that. If you've watched the council meetings, you might have also seen how we appropriated additional monies for street work. That we scrambled around after the beginning of the year. Once there was some rainstorms and some unexpected impacts to our roadways, the engineer did a study and did a report to us and kind of reported to the council that there was some immediate needs to take care of some of these roadways before they failed. And he's telling me, there's probably an equivalent need next year. That between these 2 years, if we can keep up some efforts, and we're talking like over $700,000 of road work that we're doing this year of the resurfacing, and then we'd be looking at doing about the same level next year. But we're going to have to scramble in the budget to put that kind of money together once again. I was able to look at some of our savings from the previous year, from some of our special revenue funds, some accumulated balances, and reshuffle some of the projects in order to fund what they needed to initiate in this year. But so street paving, once again, is going to be a big concern, I would think, of the committee on how we go about funding that. The other unfortunate news I have is our police pension plan. We just received the actuarial report this last year, and their estimate of the contribution the city would have to make to the police pension plan is going to increase substantially. I'm thinking in dollars over probably about $150,000 of new funding we're going to need to give next year. Now, the pension board hasn't received that formal presentation yet. We are scheduled tomorrow, actually. And I expect there's going to be some good questions to the actuary as to why we're getting hit with such a big increase. The positive side is that our pension plan has been 90% funded. This pulls it down to about 80% funding, and it's for the biggest part is because of our investment returns last year. And it doesn't look much better since last September 30th, as far as returns that we've been able to to make on the pension plan. So that's just a caution. I think I'll know more probably at our next meeting of what the actuary recommends, or what what ideas he might have to help us out on that. So but I just wanted to give you a heads up. Between that, the road work, and the early retirement program, I think those are 3 current year events that are going to have to be considered as we put the budget together. Well, one last thing, the labor agreements are both due for renewal too, so that would be the 4th item I would have.
And those labor agreements, if my memory serves me correctly, expire middle of the year, or?
No, September 30th.
September 30th? Okay. So hopefully we'll know where we're headed with that one sometime this summer, we hope. Let's see. Anybody got any, out of all of that you'd like to discuss?
I guess I'd like to revisit the early retirement compensation. I can see, obviously, there was a reallocation of some of the funds. All the difference, the $257,000 came out of the general fund, or was there some?
Yes, all the employees involved are general fund employees. So yes, that whole $250,000 is out of general fund reserves.
Was there any additional changes that affected that general fund that allowed this expenditure to be accounted for?
If I understand your question, no.
Well, it just seems like we finalized the budget last October. Mm-hmm. And we were dealing with already a reasonably tight budget to start with, and the council approved no increase in millage, and I think the citizens found it favorable. So with that said, in December, we saw some additional expenses in the sum of about $257,000. Was there any particular accounts or areas or departments that were affected by the shift in these expenditures to account for the early retirement funding?
No, we didn't really affect any of the departmental budgets. We presented to the city council of being additional funding for the amount needed to pay the departing employees. So we didn't modify the departmental budgets.
I just was trying to account for where we saw the shift in fundings, and just to be aware, so when we continue to proceed forward, we know where there may have been some other areas that we may want to pay attention to.
Yeah, most of the departments, I would tell you, as we put together this year's, the budget we're operating in now, it was, we were scrambling last year to get it in a balanced state and stay within the same millage rate and do the programs that the council, wanted to continue, like the stormwater efforts and the street paving allocation. So, looking at the departments to try to raise that money or keep or fund the retirement program out of their current budgets just wasn't anything that was feasible.
Sure. I just thought it might have been something similar to what we did with the funds with the quarter round projects when we opted to address the concerns with the drainage easements, and maybe consider the fact, did we complete the drainage easement work with those funds? In the past, we had some funding set up throughout the city to clean up the swells and establish quarter rounds in the quarter round project.
Right.
Those funds were reallocated with the decision that we had some stormwater drainage easements that needed to be addressed. So I think from what I last understood, the drainage easements were cleaned out, and then were we in a position to reallocate those funds back to the quarter round projects?
Well, yeah. in the current year, in order to do some cleanup work in the drains and the ditches, we did discontinue the quarter round program that was, something we've been doing for every year, is installing new quarter round throughout the city. So we put a hold on that for this fiscal year in order to be able to shift those monies to the drainage work. Our program at this instant still presumes it will re-implement the 500,000 going to new quarter round in next fiscal year. I've already heard informally that may not happen either. So I'll have to report back to you later on what, if there's always shifting priorities, and I'll just advise you at this point that that may not be something we recommend next year, is another, to get back on track. We still have to look at that and see how the total funding is and what our other priorities might be.
Thank you, Ken.
Anybody else got questions, comments, things to bring up as we go forward? Okay. I think we've gone through, I sent you all a memo that was dated December 11th that Ken sent out. Ken's pretty well covered that. And as we go along and get closer to the real budget season, which really starts, we start really seeing it May, June. And we'll really get into a discussion of these things. So before we get, let's see what else we've got that I'll remind you of. I guess we'll get into the budget calendar. You should have all gotten a copy of that. Our next meeting is February 29th to review the first quarter budget. And then there's a fair gap until we actually start seeing the budget, which is in June. And as most of you know, the Budget Committee is busy June and through July. And then we usually have a meeting, sometimes two, to put together and approve what we're going to show the City Council as far as the budget recommendations from this committee. Those go on late August and into September. So I would say again to all of you, I know it's right through the prime vacation season for a lot of people, but please do your best to look at this calendar and see if you can work around it. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, I think we've taken care of that. Any other business that you want to bring up? Again, questions or comments? I make one, again, remind all of you and to you, Mr. Hall, any questions or anything, address them to Ken Kilgore, who's Chief Financial Officer, and get a hold of him. If you want to come in and meet with him, set it up with him, and because he knows this budget document backwards and forwards and upside down. And so several people have availed themselves over a period of years going in and getting up to speed. And you're certainly familiar more than a lot of people with how Florida government works. So he can put the spin on for Sebastian and get you up to speed. And I don't think I have anything else. Ken? All set?
All set, sir.
Okay. Happy New Year. We are adjourned.